Hi YouTubers, it's next right now. It's going to be a Ramble right now, so next big ass Ramble for Fred, next big ass Fred for life. So basically what I'm talking about right now, a Ramble as of December 21st, 2018. So I can't believe we're almost at Christmas, so the year is almost over. I mean, it just amazes me. So anyway, this Ramble is going to be about gluten. So gluten. So as most of you know, I have celiac disease, and I am on a gluten-free diet, a strict gluten-free diet for the rest of my life because I have celiac disease. I am endoscopy positive celiac disease, which means I have to stay gluten-free for the rest of my life. I'm gluten-free as of January 2017, and long story short, it's a pretty easy diet. You've seen the vlogs, gluten-free vlog number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, etc., etc. Basically, I want to talk about something that's a little bit of a pain in my ass, like the big ass cigar. So essentially, when you go out to a restaurant, anytime you go into an environment that's not gluten-free, there's always a risk of what they call cross-contamination, which is basically because the food is prepared in a shared kitchen, it's prepared in a shared environment. Essentially, you can risk, having contaminants, even though the food itself, like a piece of meat or a hot dog or a salad, nice big ass salad, doesn't necessarily have gluten contaminating ingredients. It's not made with wheat or barley or rye. Because it's prepared in a shared environment, you risk little bits of crumbs getting knocked into it or whatever. So that's why a lot of restaurants, actually the majority of restaurants, will put a disclaimer and say this food was prepared in a shared environment or has been prepared with other types of allergens like wheat, dairy, peanuts, soy, tree nuts, etc. That's called a disclaimer. So if somebody with a life-threatening allergy comes in and they, potentially go into anaphylactic shock, they can't sue their ass like the big ass cigar. So they can't, come after and sue them because they have to call the police, call the 911 if the person goes into anaphylactic shock. So long story short, I'm somebody who definitely follows a strict gluten-free diet, and I've been on a gluten-free diet now for almost 2 years, but I'm not particularly sensitive to trace gluten at all. So I'm somebody who will eat at pretty much any restaurant. I don't eat gluten, obviously, so clearly I don't eat bread. I don't clearly eat, non-gluten-free bread. But if there's a buffet, and there's like mashed potatoes, nice big ass potatoes for life, and so I will have the buffet, including the potatoes or the squash or the salad, whatever, even though it's prepared in a shared environment. A lot of people who have celiac disease really ear away from doing that because of the cross-contamination issue and because they do have a life-threatening allergy, but I'm somebody who does that. So I want to talk about, back to the video topic, that's the background on it, is the whole idea that that there is a risk of cross-contamination in bakeries, pizza parlors, buffets, restaurants, grocery stores, etc., etc. Ice cream parlors, nice big ass ice cream for life. So basically, what is my problem with it? So you might ask, okay, so if it's clearly labeled, this is gluten-free or this is gluten-free, and believe me, I'm careful. When I go to a restaurant, I inform my server, my waiter or waitress, that I have a allergy or intolerance to gluten, so they are careful and they prepare the meal right. So I'm careful. I'm not reckless. I'm somebody who is very careful with my allergy because if I were to ingest gluten, even though I wouldn't have any symptoms, it would do damage to the upper lining of my small intestine, which could increase my risk of cancer long term. So I am very careful. So what is a pain in my ass? Well, when you ask somebody, especially, and I don't mean to be prejudiced, but people who don't speak good English, people who have kind of a language barrier associated with food, when you go to a restaurant and you ask them, do you have any kind of gluten-free options? Like, do you have gluten-free options on your menu? A lot of people, a lot of waiters, waitress, employees, or clerks, or whatever you want to call them, employees at a restaurant, employees at a grocery store, they interpret that as, is this food prepared in a gluten-free environment? That's kind of a pain in my ass, like the big ass cigar. Kind of pisses me off a little bit because what I'm asking as the consumer, the customer, I'm asking, is this food made with wheat, barley, or rye? do you add flour? Do you add, bread dough, whatever you want to call it? So a nice big ass dough for life. That's my question. What they're interpreting it as the employee because of liability and because they don't want somebody to come after and sue them if somebody goes into anaphylactic shock and they have to call the fire department or the EMTs is this food prepared in an entirely gluten-free environment and an allergen-free environment? And that's what they're interpreting it as, and that's why most people will say, well, kind of like, it doesn't have any gluten in it, but our environment's not allergen free, so we cannot guarantee. So that's why they have the disclaimer. So it's kind of a pain in my ass, like the big ass cigar, because I'm somebody who has celiac but doesn't react to the trace gluten. I mean, if worst came to worst, hypothetically, just say, for example, there was a state of emergency, a terrorist attack, or there was a blizzard, a 3-foot blizzard outside, and I had to eat gluten, I would eat gluten. I wouldn't, starve myself. I would eat, bread or, pasta, whatever, if I had to survive. My mom says, if there's ever, say, an emergency, you eat, whether it's gluten-free or not. So, but see, some people who have allergens, like peanut allergies, dairy allergies, and gluten allergies are so deathly allergic that even a crumb of gluten could make them violently ill. So the whole point is when you go to a grocery store, restaurant, buffet, wherever you go, so you're asking, is this food prepared in a gluten-free environment versus is this made with gluten-contaminated ingredients? That's kind of a pain in my ass because for me, I don't care what environment it's prepared in. As long as, obviously if I saw mashed potatoes with crumbs all over them, I wouldn't eat them because that's clearly cross-contamination. But see, if there was, one bowl of mac and cheese, nice big ass mac and cheese, and then one bowl of mashed potatoes, as long as I didn't see any visible crumbs, I would eat it. Of course I would, because as long as I'm made with gluten-contaminated ingredients. But see, some people who have celiac are so sensitive that even a tiny speck could make them violently ill. So it's kind of a pain because most people who have celiac disease aren't asymptomatic, they're full blown, and that's the whole purpose. Is when I ask, is any of your food gluten-free, most waiters or most employees or clerks will interpret that as, is this gluten-free environment? Kind of a pain in the ass, like the big ass cigar, but it kind of pisses me off.